Welcome back to the Tears of Fire podcast, the podcast where I go over the Last Dragon Chronicles by Chris DeLacy. Today we'll be covering chapters 29 through 32 of The Fire Eternal. I started this journey because I wanted to interact with this series after not reading it for over 15 years. When I went back, I could not find any podcasts, no audiobooks, and there were only a few videos on YouTube that were about 7 minutes long and over a decade old. So I figured, why not do it myself? Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope you had a safe flight in and hit no turbulence. With that, let's get into the show. Chapter 29, Liz Learns the Truth. We come off the coattails from last section where Alexa had been talking to Auntie Gwyneth in bird form. We start out this section with the narrator telling us how Liz is regarded around the neighborhood and her community, saying that she's a loved neighbor. She creates dragons for those who have problems, and they magically seem to subside after the dragon appears in those people's life. Some people do consider her eccentric, but think that overall she's the perfect mother. After this narration comes to an end, Liz comes outside back to hang up some clothes for drying. In the middle of this task, Gwilanna returns. She lands on the top of the fence again, and Liz does not react. She doesn't turn her head, she doesn't speak, for a couple of minutes. Afterwards, though, she does just ask the bird, "Is it really you?" Gwilanna then answers her. She's telling her that she's here to help train Alexa. She was sent here by David. Liz doesn't quite believe this, though. She's angry at Gwilanna and tells her that last time she was here, she kidnapped Lucy and took her to the Arctic. She could never forgive that. Gwilanna tells her that it's unlike Liz to be so unseemly and unkind. Liz doesn't quite care. She asks why she would harbor any good feelings for Gwilanna, period. Gwilanna goes on to explain what really happened to David, that though his mortal body died, he had taken in some of the ice fire from the ice. Explains how Gwen's fire tear was used to create the ice caps, and how Guinevere was the conduit of it. Liz starts to put two and two together, and starts to realize that David now has a part of Gwen's Alma in him. Gwilanna tells her that Alexa did see David through the mammoth that she sent, a thought gift, that Alexa is more powerful than we even realize. Liz has many questions running through her mind, mostly about Lucy. She's asking Gwilanna why she's connected to this whole thing and why the Fae want her, period. Gwilanna can't quite answer this, but she tells Liz that she can't do anything in bird form and that she must change her back using the ice fire. Liz tells Gwilanna that she's not trained in the magics with the K, going back to the few interviews I had done with Kaylee, who's on this journey as well, and how magics with the K is more of a naturalistic thing, coming from Gaia or the Earth versus supernatural or paranormal. Liz says the only way for Gwilanna to return to human form is through Sibyl magic, explaining that Xana is the only one that can do it. Gwilanna tells Liz that Xana is hard-headed and might not believe her that she's there for protection. At this moment, Arthur comes out holding Bonington so he can see, and he realizes this is an old acquaintance. Liz thanks Arthur for saying that this is not an old friend, which I think would be way off base to call her a friend as well. We know the last time that Gwilanna and Arthur interacted with each other was well over 16 years ago when Liz was in the process of giving birth to Lucy. Arthur had come to see her, demanding that he loved Liz and he wanted to marry her. And then Gwilanna pretty much banished him, sending him to the Folly to live as a monk. Just completely derailed his life. Arthur then informs Gwilanna and Liz that Xana will not be returning anytime soon. She's on her way back but is stuck in traffic. There's a huge human migration coming to Wayward Crescent number 42. Liz gives Gwilanna a flower that's infused with her Amma. She tells Gwilanna that the dragon Gwendolyn, who is Lucy's, is with Xana, and she'll be able to sense Liz's Amma and inform Xana that this is no lie or trick. And that pretty much brings us to the end of that first chapter, 29. I would like to bring up my opinions, though. I think, as I've said many times, Gwilanna does not need to be near or train Alexa. Alexa is a 5-year-old girl, and though she is very powerful, can't quite comprehend what's going on and won't have the intentions or the choice, really. I think the better option would be for Gwilanna to train Xana, since Xana has more of an understanding. She obviously doesn't quite know the full extent of her powers, but if Xana can learn, she could then pass down those teachings to Alexa as well. Gwilanna also did bring up David's plan, saying that he's going to the Fire Eternal source, which is in the middle of the Arctic, the very point where Guinevere had let go of Gwain's fire tear to create the ice caps. All right, now we're going to get into chapter 30. Avril tells a story. Avril, Ingvar, and Kalar had been traveling for several days. During these times, Avril was sensing that Kalar was having some anxieties and troubles. He was worrying about stuff that Avril couldn't quite understand. Kalar explained that the Eye of Gwain has been talking to him and showing him things, and when he sleeps, the Eye of Gwain helps him soar through the skies. It's terrifying dreams for a bear. During the same time, Avril is getting stories from the spirits that are flying in the northern lights and coming and talking to him and sharing memories. Most of these memories, he's trying to reach the creation and origin point of the ice caps, but he's brought mostly to Thorn. And once he's picturing Thorn, he's also drawn to the memories of Guinevere. But right when he gets to the very beginning, his memories usually fade away, or he gets startled and jump scared into being brought back into reality. On the final day, during a rest, Ingvar comes up to Avril and requests a story. Avril asks him what he'd like to hear. Ingvar just tells him, whatever is on your mind. Forget the wind, forget the night, forget the time. What do you see? Avril then closes his mind, or Avril then closes his eyes, but opens his mind, trying to picture exactly what's going on. He's shot back into history and is following Thorn. He says that Thorn is worried. He's scared. The ice is shot up out of almost nowhere, and the woman Guinevere that he had been traveling with and protecting is nowhere to be found. He spends several days searching for her, and after about the third or fourth day, he finds her propped up on an ice pedestal. The way that I pictured it was almost Snow White-esque. He waits for several days, seeing if she'll wake. Avril's concerned, thinking that she's dead, and he relays that to Ingvar. But there's a voice on the wind from another realm, obviously the Fane, saying that she's not dead. Not quite. So Avril focuses a little bit harder and watches the rest of the memory, relaying this to Ingvar as well. After Thorin had sat by Guinevere for several days, he tried several attempts to either bury her or move her. He was worried about predators. He saw a bird high up in the sky and wondered what they would eat. And he wanted to protect this girl, even in death. He looked away and decided that piling snow on top of her would not work because it could be dug through, and quickly. And one of his ideas was to break through the ice and send her to the bottom of the ocean. But at the point where he found her was the center of the ice caps, where the ice is the most thick. And though he pounced on it and bounced and tried to break it, it would not budge. So he tries to nudge her along. As soon as Thorin touches her, her body starts to crack and disintegrate. There's no smoke, no dust. Instead, her body starts to become more of a blizzard and snowflakes. During this time, little flying beings come around and speak to Thorn. In my notes I have, are these the fairies? Because they're not described other than little flying beings. The memory finally ends, and once Averill comes out of his trance, he realizes why Kalar has been so anxious this whole time. He's looking down and he sees the fire trails that connects all points to the central area that they needed to be in. But he can also sense all of the polar bears around him that had been migrating north. Now him, Ingvar, and Kalar are surrounded. That brings us to the end of that chapter. I don't think that them being surrounded is necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Ingvar had been calling them for a reason. I want to know what kind of spiritual power all these bears are going to create, if they're going to help open up another portal to the world, or if they're all going to congregate their power to smash the ice and open up a pathway to the fire eternal, which is what Gwilanna theorizes. All right. Chapter 31, The Power of Obsidian. We switch perspectives and go with Lucy and Tam back to the Folly on Farlow Island. Lucy wakes up after being knocked out into an old, empty room that was gray and cold to the touch. In the center of the room was a big block of obsidian, as well as a figure resembling Brother Bernard, but we know that he's controlled by the Fane. Him and Lucy have a conversation, and Brother Bernard tells her that she's going to help create the Darklings, which were the anti-dragons. Lucy refuses at first, says that she will not do this period and she does not have the ability, especially with obsidian. Clay is soft and easy to mold, and obsidian is hard, rigid, and cooled lava, so there's no possible way for this. The Ix threaten her, but not with her own life, with Tam. They throw Tam's limp body into the room. He's bleeding out of his nose, but still alive. They tell Lucy that they'll torture her by showing her images of her worst fears in ways that they'll kill this man, forcing one of the images into her that they'll take him to the top of the folly and throw him off the building. This freaks Lucy out, so she agrees. Her first attempt goes pretty well. She grabs two smaller chunks of obsidian, molds them together using her thoughts in her hands. It says that the obsidian becomes almost like a liquid, but still cold to the touch. Once she pulls away, she found that she's made a foot. She's hesitant to move forward, but the Ix threaten again, and before they could show another image to Lucy, she continues making the Darkling. The Darkling is described as double the size of the Penny Kettle dragons after its completion. The Penny Kettle dragons are about 10 inches, I would say. So this would put this thing at about 20. I'm not quite sure on the girth or, the weight of these things, but them being obsidian, I would guess, are substantially heavier. And so this thing is kind of scary. It's not alive, though. Lucy knows that, and she's wondering how they're going to bring him alive. The Ix then tell Lucy about David, but call him a Fane. Say that his plan will fail, and they're going to use the same conduit that he intends to use to corrupt humanity. I also have in this on my notes saying that I don't think Chris planned this. Originally with the first couple of books, David seemed to be completely human. He didn't have any supernatural urges or ulterior motives, and he was just as confused as any other human had been so far. And so I think as he was getting further into the story, he needed to make David's this otherworldly being, and since he had the Fane, he decided to combine the two. Uh, because if this was the plan all along, I feel like he would have thrown little bits and pieces here and there throughout the series. We do know that David had supernatural abilities all along, but he never had any memories or any kind of lapses in anything. At this point, Lucy passes out, and the Ix that was talking to Brother Bernard, that was controlling another brother who had a big old beard, tells Brother Bernard to send her back through a rift, send her to Wayward Crescent to visit his old brother Arthur. Or they actually call him Vincent, but we know that they're both one and the same. They want to send an Ix in her and make sure that Arthur cannot intervene. I ended it in my notes saying that it's time. The final battle is going to start to begin. That brings us to the end of that chapter. One thing I did forget to mention is that they send Lucy with a knife made of obsidian, and that it's poisonous to humans, is how they describe it. Is she planning on using this on Alexa or Arthur? I would think that if their plan is to stop everything in motion, Alexa would be the one that you need to take out since she seems to be at the center of all this. But, knowledge is power, and it seems to be that Arthur or Vincent has the most knowledge at this point on what's going on. So I'm kind of nervous for both of them. But that's going to bring us into chapter 31, Supernova. We pick back up with Liz and Arthur, and there's many people gathering at the house. They're starting to crack down Liz's bushes, but they're not trespassing just yet. They're staying on the edge or the border of her property. Liz, Arthur, and Alexa all rush to the inside of the house. Arthur flips on the news, and the news is saying that there's a migration of humans as well. Thousands of people congregating in this one area. Arthur turns to Liz and says that they're here to witness something special, something spectacular, something on the level of a supernova. During this time, Liz realizes that Alexa is nowhere to be found near them. She yells out, and Alexa calls back. She's down in Xana's room. Liz rushes down the stairs to go find her, and Alexa is holding the ice fire that was from the freezer, sprinkling it on 4 of David's dragons. Well, all 3 of David's dragons, including Groin. So it was Gadzooks, Graith, Golly Gosh, and Groin. After this happened, their eyes started growing violet, as well as the fairy door out in the rock garden that Liz and Alexa had set up. Alexa simply tells Liz that it's time for them to go. She doesn't say where, and she doesn't say why. This next part gets semi-emotional, at least for me. There's a humming sound coming from all of the humans on the outside, and Liz recognizes it. It's kind of a melody. Alexa starts to hum this as well, and fairies start coming out of the little door. Liz realizes that these aren't fairies, though, and calls them Fairies, spelled almost exactly the same, except for instead of an R, there's an N. She says that they're not good, they're here to hurt them. But these Fairies are nicer in nature, and they tell Liz that they're not the same. They're there for help, and that they need to commingle with the image of Goddess. I'm guessing that that means these clay dragons, although even though they do have some of Gwaine in them, they're not real dragons themselves, so that interests me just a little bit. Alexa starts humming as well and leaves Gretel in the room where the picture of Galant starts coming alive, the picture that Alexa had drawn. This leaves Gretel in a trance, and she's fascinated, doesn't really quite know what to do. Alexa tells Liz that Auntie Guinevere is helping David. She calls him Daddy, though. Bonington is out there with them as well, and he's shape-shifting, going through forms very rapidly. Liz describes it as almost putting through a code or flipping the television without actually seeing what's going on. He finally settles back on a tabby cat, and as the dragons are leaving, the only one that stops and turns around is Gadzooks. We can see that he's a little hesitant. He looks back at the house, back at Liz and hers. We don't get the translation of it, but Liz turns to him, hers back, and says, "I love you too." Gadzooks finally leaves. There's a big flash of violet light, and the portal closes. Alexa goes to check, but when she opens the fairy door, the only thing that she can see are stones again. And the dragons are gone. I was pretty hurt by the departure of Gadzooks. He's been here for 4 books and been one of the main guys. He hasn't really been too active in this 4th one. But I hope that they're there, or they're going to help David in some way. I would like to see David interact with Gadzooks again, even though he's a riding dragon and David doesn't seem to be riding anything. If they can still influence the future together, David only needs a pen and paper. Sorry, Supernova was actually chapter 32. I wrote it wrong in my notes. So that actually brings us to the end of this section. I know it's kind of a short episode, Next week, or maybe possibly the week after, I might have to take a week off depending on the schedules with the girls over at Aragon and back again. Darian and Lucy will be returning to help me close out book four. That's kind of cool. After that, we'll have Kaylee back to go over the entirety of the Fire Eternal. And then shortly after that, we will have Mr. Schubert over at TNO coming to visit again to open up Dark Fire. So, if you guys have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you have YouTube and Spotify comments. You can also leave a review. That would be so much appreciated. And my email is gadzooks, the last DM at gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. Also, look out for Patreon. That'll be coming. And I recently went to a little local show slash farmers market where I met a local author who has written a few anthologies as well as a standalone novel, and he's got a second standalone coming uh, here soon in the next couple of months. They're based in the Pacific Northwest, exactly where I live, including Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and some of the towns I live less than 10 minutes away from. So I'm going to be putting those out as bonus episodes, and the author has also agreed to come on after those will be done. There are four total. A fifth one will be coming, but yeah, that's kind of exciting news. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me on this journey. I will see you guys next week. Have a safe flight out and hit no turbulence.